Alright, so today we're going to get into Chapter 8, doing the first two sections, Section 1 and 2, over the volume of a cylinder and the volume of a cone. I combined them because the steps taken to find each of them are very similar. It's just a matter of using the correct equation that goes with the volume of cylinder and volume of cone to find the proper unit they're asking for. So, let's go ahead and jump into volume of a cylinder. Here is your equation for volume of a cylinder. It is V equals pi r squared h. So, pi r squared is your area of the base. So, the base of a cylinder is a circle. So, that is what you use to find the area of the base. And then you have to multiply it by h, which is your height of the cylinder, how tall your cylinder is. R stands for radius. Remember, radius is going from the middle of your circle out to an edge. So it's not all the way across that circle, it's just halfway across that circle from the middle to the edge. That's very important to remember because sometimes they might give you all the way across, which is called the diameter, which you don't need the diameter, you need the radius. So the diameter, if you're trying to find the radius, is half of your diameter. So pi r squared h is what you'll use to find the volume of a cylinder. So let's go ahead and jump into an example. So this says, find the volume of the cylinder, round your answer to the nearest tenth. So, for volume of a cylinder, obviously first thing you need to know is what your volume formula is. And like that last slide said, V equals pi r squared h. That is your volume formula, or volume equation. Once you have that written, you need to fill in the things you want to solve, or the things that you know. So, V is what we're trying to solve, so we leave it as V. Equals pi, which when you use pi, obviously we know that's like 3.14159, whatever. You don't want to round anything, or try not to round much, until you get to your final answer. That's when you'll then round to the nearest tenth, so you aren't, so there's not as much error in your answer. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So pi r squared, r. Here, they give us two units, 6 and 10. 6 is this. So 6 would be the height of your cylinder. 10, it shows this line going all the way across. So 10 would actually be your diameter. So 10 is not what you plug in for r. 10 is your diameter. We need the radius, which is half of the diameter. So half of 10 would be 5. So your radius is actually 5. So when I plug in here, it would be 5 squared. And then my h is 6. So that's my last units. These are all being multiplied together. So pi times 5 squared times 6. From there, you're just going to simplify this side. So V equals, let's go part by part. 5 squared. We want to get rid of my exponents first. So 5 squared means 5 times 5. So bring down my pi times 25 times 6. So this last part, you can actually just plug in your calculator all together because you don't want to mess up with the rounding. So here, in my calculator, I'm going to go, if you have a TI 30XA, there's a pi button. So the first thing you do is click pi button, pi times 25, so times 25 times 6 times 6. Equals, and you get something that looks like this, 471.2388898. That is what you get when you plug that in. But it says to round to the nearest tenth. So remember, your tenth spot is this spot right here, the spot right behind the decimal point. So they want us to round to there. So if I'm rounding to that, I need to look at the number behind it, and it's going to tell me whether to go up or stay the same. So all the stuff in front stays the same, 471 point this 3 tells me to do what with the 2? Remember, 4 or lower means you stay the same. 5 or higher means you go up. So, since it's a 3, that tells me to stay the same. So this 2 stays as 2. So it would be 471.2. And then your units are inches, and for volume, it's to the 3rd power. So it's actually what we call inches cubed, or inches to the 3rd power. So there's your final answer, 471.2 inches cubed. Okay, so that's how we work through finding the volume of the cylinder. So I want you to try this one on your own. Again, you have to pay attention to what's given to you and where you plug that in. So pause the video, try this problem, and then come back and we will do it together. Okay, so hopefully you attempted this. Again, volume of a cylinder is V equals pi r squared h. Once you have that, you need to plug in the information you're given. So V equals pi. Then we have to ask ourselves, do we know what r is? What is the radius of this cylinder? And if you look, 25 is your radius, because radius is just half of your diameter going all the way across your base. So half of that is 25. So this right here is what is considered your radius. So 25 is plugged in for r, and that is squared, times h, which if I look at my cylinder, my h is my height, which in this case is 40 inches. So 40 gets plugged in for h. I'm going to simplify my power of 2 first. So V equals pi times 25 to the 2nd power. So you can use a calculator on that if you need to. 25, and you hit your 2nd power button, and that would be 625. And then bring down my multiply by 40. And again, once you get to this step, you can just plug that all in at once. So I plug in pi times 625 times 40. Okay? So pi times 625 times 40, and you should get V equals 78539.81634. But again, they want us to round to the nearest tenth, so we look for my 10th spot, which is the number right behind the decimal point, which is there, and I have to look at the number behind it to tell me whether to go up or stay the same. So this 1, since it's 4 or lower, tells me to stay the same, so that 8 stays as 8, so I bring everything down in front, so it would be V equals 78,539.8, and then my units are inches cubed. So that is your volume of that cylinder. Okay? So they also might do it a little different, where they give you the volume and ask you to find a certain part of the volume formula. So, for example, here, they say find the height of the cylinder and round your answer to the nearest whole number. So, we're still using the volume formula for a cylinder. V equals pi r squared h. But here, we are going to plug in what they're given, what is given to us. We know that we're finding the height, so we aren't going to have anything to plug in for h. That's what we're going to solve for. So here, the volume, they tell us, is 314. So 314 is what I'm going to plug in for V. Equals pi times, do they give us r? Yes, they do. They tell us here the radius is 5 inches. So 5 gets plugged in for r times h. H was not given to us, so we leave it as H. Okay, so now, what we're going to do is, if we're solving for H, that means we need to get H by itself. First, I'm going to simplify this side. We have pi times 5 to the second power. So I'm going to bring down 314 equals pi, and then 5 to the second power, I'll simplify that, is 25 times H. Okay? Here, bring down again, because we still need to simplify this side, we need to do pi times 25. So what I'm going to do in my calculator is pi times 25. And I get 78.5, I'll just do 54. It's actually 539. I'm just going to round it and make it 54 times H. So last step here, if we have 78.54 times H and we want to get H by itself, that means we need to move this number to the other side. And remember, to move stuff to the other side, you do opposite operations. So if this is being multiplied, to move it over, we have to divide by 78.54 on both sides. Those cancel, leaving me with H, which is what I want. That will give me the final answer. 314 divided by 78.54 is 3.997. But they tell us to round to the nearest whole number. So whole number means the first number in front of the decimal. So if we're rounding to the nearest whole number, we look at the 3, that's what we're rounding to, but then we look at the number behind it, and it's going to tell me whether to go up or stay the same. 9, since that's 5 or higher, tells me that 3 needs to go up to 4. So my final answer would be 4 is H. And remember, your units is inches. So my H in this problem is 4 inches. That is your final answer. Alright, let's try one of those on your own, see if you are catching on. So when you try this one, find the height of this cylinder and round your answer to the nearest whole number. So again, pause the video, try this, see if you can get it, and we will then do it together. Alright, so again, we're using the volume formula. V equals pi r squared h. Okay, so here, again, we're going to plug in the information they give us. They give us volume, which is 206, so that's what I'm going to plug in for V. 206. Pi, bring down my pi. R, do they give us R? Yes, they do. It's 4 centimeters. So 4 gets plugged in for R. And then H, they do not give us. That's what we're trying to find, so I bring down the variable H. I'm going to simplify my power of 2, so bring down everything I'm not using yet. 206 equals pi times 4 to the second power is 16 times H. Still need to simplify this side. I'm going to do pi times 16. So bring down 206 equals, in your calculator, pi times 16 equals 50.27 when I round it, times H. Then last step, this is being multiplied by H, but we want H by itself. So in order to do that, we have to do the opposite operation, and we're going to divide by 50.27. So both sides will be divided by 50.27. Those cancel. H equals 206 in your calculator divided by 50.27 will give you 4.0978. But again, it wants us to round to the nearest whole number. So if here's my whole number, I look at the number behind it, and the number 0 tells me to stay the same, so this will stay as 4. So my final answer will be h equals 4 centimeters. That's my unit, 4 centimeters. So there's your final answer. There's your h, or your height in this problem. Okay? So if you're able to do, or hopefully you're catching on with that. If you're able to do that, it shouldn't be any trouble to do the next one, because the volume of a cone is the same formula, except there is a 1/3 thrown in at the beginning. So it's 1/3 is being multiplied by pi r squared h. Okay, so the total, or the whole formula or equation is v equals 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay, so that is the volume of a cone formula. So we're going to go through and do the same thing with volume of a cone. So this says find the volume of a cone, round your answer to the nearest tenth. So first thing you need to do is write down your volume of a cone formula. V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. Then we're going to plug in what we know. Volume we don't know because that's what we're finding. So V equals comes down 1/3 pi r squared. R is what we need to see if we know. So we don't, right here they tell us this full line is 8 feet. So if the whole line is 8 feet, that means our radius is half of that. So in this instance, our radius would be 4. So in place of r, we're going to put 4, and that will be squared. And then our h, or our height of this cone, is 9 feet. That's how tall the cone is. So 9 feet. 9 gets plugged in for that. Okay, next we need to simplify our exponent. So v equals 1/3 times pi times 4 to the second power is 16 times 9. Okay, so here, I know this is a little different that most math teachers will tell you, because most will say, okay, multiply 1/3 times pi and then write your answer, and just so you're showing each step, which is a good habit to get into. But with this, it might be better, it's probably better to just multiply them all out together in your calculator so you do not make rounding mistakes, because you do want to make sure you're rounding to your answer to the nearest tenth. So what I would do here, once I've got everything simplified with the exponents and all that, I'm just going to plug all this in to my calculator. So I'm going to plug in 1/3 times pi times 16 times 9 equals, and that will give you V equals 150.79644474. They want us to round to the nearest tenth, so that means my tenth spot is the number right behind the decimal. So 7 is my tenth spot. I need to look at the number behind it to tell me what to do with the 7. So the number behind it is 9. That is 5 or higher. So that tells me to round up. So this 7 should round up to 8. So my final answer would be V equals 150.8 feet cubed. So remember, anytime you're finding the volume, your unit is cubed, or to the third power. So V equals 150.8 feet cubed should be your final answer for the volume of that cone. All right, let's do one on your own. So find the volume of this cone and round your answer to the nearest tenth. So pause the video and try this. All right, so hopefully you've tried this one. Again, we're using the cone formula. V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. And we're going to plug in what we know. So we don't know volume, so I bring down the V equals 1/3 times pi times r squared. We need to know what r is. So radius, in this case, this is a line halfway, so this would be my radius. 2 is my radius, is what I'm going to plug in for r, and that's squared. And then times my height, which my height of this cone is 8 inches. So times 8. So I'm going to simplify my exponent. V equals 1/3. I'm bringing down what I haven't used. Times pi times 2 to the second power is 4. And then that's still multiplied by 8. So again, once I'm to this step, it's best to just plug all that in to your calculator. So 1/3 times pi times 4 times 8. And you will get V equals 33.510326164. But again, we don't need all those numbers because all we're looking to do is round to the nearest tenth. 10th spot is the 5. We look at the number behind it, which is 1. 1 is 4 or lower, so that tells me to stay the same. So 5 stays 5. So my final answer is V equals 33.5 inches cubed. There's your final answer to that one. Okay, and then lastly, they will also give you the ones like this, where it is finding the height. They give you the volume and the radius, and they ask you to find the height of your cone. Okay, so here it says find the height of the cone, round your answer to the nearest tenth. I'm going to plug in what I know. We know the volume is 956. Times 1 equals 1/3 times pi times, do we know the r? Yes, we do. It says r is 9 centimeters. So I plug in a 9 for r, and that's squared, times h, because we do not know what h is. That's what we're finding. Okay, so for finding h, we need to simplify everything on its side first. So I'm going to start with the 9 squared. So bring down 956 equals 1/3 times pi times 9 squared is 81, and then that's multiplied by h. Alright, in my calculator, I'm going to simplify everything on this side that's with h first. So I need to figure out what 1/3 times pi times 81 is. So in my calculator, 1/3 times pi times 81 should give you, so I'm going to bring down my 956 equals, and it gives you 84.82 times h. Okay, last step, we're going to take 84.82 times h. If it's being multiplied, but we have to solve for h, we're trying to find what h is. We need to get it by itself by opposite operations. So that means this needs to move over here. Since it's being multiplied, the opposite of multiplication is division. So I have to divide both sides by 84.82. So 84.82 is divided on both sides. Those 84.82s cancel, leaving you with h, which is what you need. And in my calculator, I'm going to do 956 divided by 84.82. And it'll give me 11.2709. Here they say to round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so this one's a little different. Before they were wanting us to round these ones to the whole number. So you got to make sure you read the directions on what they want. So if I'm rounding this to the nearest tenth, I have to underline the tenth spot, which is my 2, and look at the number behind it, which is 7. 7 is 5 or higher, so it tells me to go up with the 2. So that 2 becomes a 3, and my final answer is h equals 11.3 centimeters. So your final answer is h equals 11.3 centimeters. All right? So hopefully that was understandable. Hopefully that helped you understand volume of a cylinder and a cone. The main thing is, like I've talked about all year, you're going to be using information or things from chapter 1. You just use that equation for volume to plug in the information they give you and solve. If they're trying to find like height, you have to use that chapter 1 information where you take opposite operations and move it to the other side. Okay? Thanks for watching.